Hi everybody, welcome back to Storytime. I am Miss Emily and I'm excited to join you today for another book about something that happens in a garden. I know some of you might be gardening at home with your family, or you might notice that there are some more plants growing right now in your neighborhood because it's springtime and things are changing out in nature. So we're going to learn about something that happens in a garden in this book. So first you can sit down in a comfy spot and take a big deep breath. Good job, guys. All right, so this book is called Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. For years, Mr. McGreely dreamed of planting a garden. He dreamed of getting his hands dirty, of growing yummy vegetables, and of gobbling them all up. But he never once tried it until this spring, said Mr. McGreely. This spring, by golly, I'm going to plant a garden. So he hoed and he sowed and he watched his garden grow. Lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes. Yum, yum, yummy, said Mr. McGreely. I'll soon fill my tummy with crisp, fresh veggies. Before we go to the next page, I want you to look really close at these pictures. So here's Mr. McGreely in his garden, and there's some vegetables that are growing. There's his watering can and a shovel, and then look over here. See if you can tell what these little guys are. We're going to find out soon. But one night when the sun went down and the moon came up, 3 hungry bunnies appeared. Tippy, 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 pat, muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning when Mr. McGreely saw his gnawed sprouts, he was angry, so he built a small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. There, he declared, nobody can get into my garden now. And the sun went down and the moon came up and tippy, 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 pat, spring hurdle, dash, 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 muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his nibbled leaves and gnawed sprouts, he was really angry. So he built a tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. He huffed. Those flop ears will never get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now. Can anybody find the little bunnies? Keep looking. If you need a hint, look over here. And the sun went down and the moon came up and tippy, 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 pat, dig, scrabble, scratch, 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 spring hurdle, dash, 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 muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was really, really angry. So he made a deep, wet trench outside the tall wooden wall, behind the small wire fence, all around his vegetable garden. Ha! He snorted. Those pufftails can't get under it. They can't get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now. And the sun went down and the moon came up and tippy, 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 pat, dive, paddle, splash, 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 dig, scrabble, scratch, 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 spring hurdle, dash, 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 muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning when Mr. McGreely saw his chopped blossoms, his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was furious. So he hammered and blocked, sawed and stalked, drilled and filled and trapped and locked, and he built a huge, enormous thing before the deep, wet trench outside the tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence all around his garden. I've outsmarted those twitch whiskers for sure, he exclaimed. They can't get through it, they can't get under it, and they can't get over it. No bunny, no way, no how can get into my vegetable garden now. And the sun went down, and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 stop! The 3 hungry bunnies looked and smelled and touched the huge, enormous thing before them, and tippy, 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 pat, the bunnies hopped away. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his untouched vegetables, he was happy. "I beat the bunnies!" he whooped, and did a jiggly-wiggly victory dance. Then he climbed over, jumped across, squeezed between, and crawled under until he reached his vegetable garden. "Ah," sighed Mr. McGreely, "at last!" Smacking his lips, he picked and pulled up lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes, and with his basket overflowing, he reached inside for something yummy. So everyone take a peek here. Look up in this picture. Mr. McGreely just climbed into the vegetable garden area, and he's so excited, but look who's sneaking up behind him. Let's see what happens next. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The end. So he's sitting there enjoying some carrots with his new bunny friends. I love that story. I think it's so funny how those bunnies, they always find a way to get into your garden. And sometimes that really happens. They're really, really tricky. But it can teach us a lot about animals and gardening, and we can learn how to be friends with the bunnies. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.